Let's begin by debunking the misconceptions, the two largest misconceptions that most people have. And these misconceptions are also promoted by individuals who wish to profit from them. There is the idea that prosperity is simply an indication that you are divinely blessed, that if you are prosperous, you must be a good individual. That is false. But the other misconception is just as extreme, and it is on the opposite end. That to be a good individual, you must be impoverished. People think that monks and nuns have to be good people because they don't have money. And well, they are monks and nuns. So obviously that means you can't have money and be a good person. Those are two extremes. One saying that all good people must be blessed and have prosperity and good health, of course. And the other saying, you can't be a good person, you can't be a spiritual person if you have any worldly goods at all. Both of these are false, but they are promoted continually. How many times have you heard evangelists promote a prosperity gospel, telling you that if you will just do what you're supposed to do, or if you will just give them money because that is what you're really supposed to do, that you will be blessed in all kinds of abundance. And you know that is not true. God is not saying to you, oh, give one person special money and then I will dump boatloads of money on you. It does not work that way. And when you look at health, oh my, when you say, oh, health indicates that you are blessed by the divine, well, certainly health is a great blessing, but it does not mean that you are a good person. It may mean that you're just a lucky person, that you just happen to be born with good genes, that you weren't exposed to some terrible chemical as a child, or later in warfare as an adult, or in your place of work, because safety regulations didn't control the substance to which you were exposed. Now, understand that on the opposite extreme, there are those who would promote poverty as well, saying to you, oh, you don't need to have wealth to be happy. You don't need money. In fact, you shouldn't have it if you want to be a spiritual person. So just make sure you give it to us to control so you can live in that spiritual poverty. A lot of politics works that way. We'll take your money, we'll distribute it to the poor, we'll distribute it out for warfare, we'll distribute it for whatever we feel like, so you can live the good life. but they're not trying to give you the good life. The idea is to keep themselves in the good life, to keep their position and power. So now we debunk two myths. Now, what about this whole idea of blessing? What makes success or failure? Success is not just a blessing. Success occurs from several things. One thing that is required for success is an investment of some sort. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's time, sometimes it's effort, sometimes it's a little bit of all of them. And sometimes it seems to be none of them, because the investment that has been made doesn't necessarily have to come from you. Now, there is another element to success, and that is the willingness to fail, because you are going to fail as often, no, more often than you succeed. And each time you fail, you learn a lesson. Failures are the stepping stones to success. Now, there is another element, and that is timing. You must be in the proper element of time to have success and prosperity. Now, some people would say there is an element of luck involved. We would tell you luck is partly hard work, but not in the way you might think. It is knowing what you're doing. Luck is knowing the right people. Social contacts are part of good fortune and luck. And timing, a feel for the time that something will work. Some people have it, and some people fall into it by accident. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a shortage of one thing, that it cannot be made up by having another. It is true that sometimes success just occurs, but there is always something in reality behind it. It does not just occur because you are a good person, and it does not just not occur because you are a bad person. You cannot, you should not ever judge anyone's spirituality by their success or by their lack of success, by their prosperity or their poverty, by their abundance or their lack thereof. And while you speak of abundance, understand this. Abundance is not the same as money. You can have money and still live in poverty. If you have all of the money in the world, but it is under your mattress, you would be just as well off if you did not have a penny, because you will be living as if you do not have a penny. And if you have abundant money and it isn't under your mattress, you're buying houses and boats and cars, and you're spending all of your time working and juggling investments and trying to make more money, and you never get to enjoy your houses and your boats and your cars, that money is of no more benefit to you than the money that would be stuffed in the mattress or under the bed. But abundance is something different. Abundance means you have time to be with your children or your parents or your siblings. Abundance means you have time to enjoy the things that are in your life. Abundance means you can take the time to build relationships. Abundance means that you can sleep well at night, that you will not be worried about trying to make money in the future or distraught over the loss in the past. You only have the present anyway. If you worry about the past, you worry about that which cannot be changed. And if you worry about the future, you're worrying about those things that have not yet occurred. You are in the here, you are in the now. So let's think just a little bit about how you become prosperous. The first thing you must do is have a positive mindset. You do not have to be a good person to be prosperous. We desire you to be good, but we would tell you that is not what makes you prosperous. There are plenty of people who are egotistical, self-centered, that are prosperous. And there are plenty of those people that are wealthy and yet impoverished, as we just shared with you. But that is by their choice. So if you want to be prosperous, the first thing you have to do is have the mindset that desires prosperity. And you must also realize what the cost of prosperity is, because there is some trade-off if you desire to change the amount of income that you have, or the way that you live, or where you live, or what kind of home you are in. There is always some trade-off. What you need to know is how much time you wish to spend with your family, how much time you wish to spend with vacationing, how much time you wish to spend in travel. Now, of course, if you became ridiculously rich, all of that might be irrelevant. But you will notice that ridiculously rich people are often not satisfied and often not happy. Somebody will tell you, though, money cannot buy happiness. And that is true when you look at the super wealthy. But poverty, true poverty, causes ill health, depression, struggle, marriage difficulties, problems with children and siblings. There is a host of problems that comes with true poverty. So in essence, money does buy happiness to a level. And once you reach that level, money no longer buys happiness. Now, that level may vary a little bit with different people according to what they value and desire in life and what they want out of life. But in any given society, that level of prosperity or money is somewhere in the ballpark of middle class to upper middle class. Below that, you start suffering from struggles. And above that, you can frequently become obsessed with earnings and moving onward. And if you just keep buying bigger and having to work more to sustain it, well, you're living just as impoverished as if you had nothing. And should you choose that lifestyle and suddenly become ill, you will find that you were no better off than you were if you had had nothing. So that is the essence when we speak to you of wealth. What about poverty? Poverty is not just a lack of funds. Poverty is more a spiritual state of mind. Anyone can make money. Now, somebody out there will be saying immediately, oh, if anyone could make money, then why am I not making money? I don't have a job, or I didn't do this, or I can't do that. And we will tell you, you have made life choices. And perhaps at some point, you wanted something more than something else. People choose to not get an education for something specific they would like to do, or they choose to get an education for something they really don't want to do when they could have already been in the workforce earning money. But you make choices. And those choices, when they are out of line with your life priorities, lead to an impoverishment, even if you are earning a substantial income, or if you are living off of many investments. Because poverty is the consciousness of feeling you don't have enough. If you have a $10 million mansion and you are dying to increase your income to get a $50 million mansion, you are impoverished. So much more so than the person who has a $50,000 or $100,000 house and is having meals every evening with their family and enjoying watching their children grow, and maybe even putting aside a teeny bit of money for special events or something that they would like to see for their children or their children's children. So wealth is proportionate, but in the same way, poverty is proportionate. Now, we cannot simply speak of individual wealth and poverty and tie this to spirituality without going a whole lot further. Because in truth, the spirituality is not just an individual thing, it is a collective element as well. You have the essence of yourself, but your community has an essence, and your town or city has an essence, your county has an essence, your state, your country. And when you start looking at this collectively, it is not just about the amount that everyone has, but it is about the way in which they choose to use this. Now, it is very different throughout the world, but we will speak to you focused somewhat on capitalism because most of those who are actually hearing this are part of capitalist societies. Ultimately, as a member of a capitalist society, you are not seen as a citizen only. You become a consumer. And your government and your businesses and your corporations all treat you as a consumer. This is a contagious illness, and often it trickles down to individuals, even small companies. Instead of seeking the good for everyone, seeking the profit for the self. And how far has this reached out? It affects all segments of your society to the point that commercial interest buys up housing and drives housing cost up as investments, to the point that people cannot get health care because drugs are too expensive, because investors need to profit from them. And when you speak of any of these type of things, the corporations are lobbying your political figures, all of your political figures, regardless of party, and they all have vested interest in keeping you as a paying consumer rather than as a prospering citizen, because if you are a paying consumer, they can retain power. They're being paid to keep you as a consumer, and as long as they do, they can get the money they need to run for office and be voted in again and again and again. Nothing to do with politics, everything to do with money. We're not talking to you about politics. We're talking to you only about prosperity and poverty and spirituality, the ties of money, not to the beliefs of a party, but to the money that is behind that. And that money doesn't care about what a party wants or does. It only cares about supporting a party that will support its income, its way of income. So now you look throughout the world and you think about prosperity. And then all of a sudden you realize, how do nations make money? Not just by selling health. They make money by selling weapons, one nation to another, and destroying each other. And of course, if you destroy a nation, then you have to prosper by rebuilding that nation. And you then need to sell more arms to raise money to do some rebuilding, and you rebuild some place here and another place gets destroyed. And meanwhile, you're see, because there has been so much poverty in the place that was destroyed, disease has gone rampant, and so the healthcare industry can pick back up and start selling more and more drugs. It all interacts in a terrible spiral, a terrible spiritual absence spiral. And it gets sold as if it is a good thing. Oh, we are giving food to the poor victims of famine caused by the war from the weapons we sold. Oh, we are giving medicine to all of these poor, suffering people who are dying because crops won't grow in the desert, because the rains don't come when they should, because we have destroyed the environment misusing fossil fuels. And there is another one, of course, the whole selling of energy, energy that is there for free, energy that comes from the sun, energy that comes from the static electricity in the stratosphere, energy that comes from the movement of wind, the energy that comes from the movement of water, the energy that comes from the crust of the earth, the energy that evolves out of the bowels of the earth, the thermal energy, the geothermal energy. There is so much free energy that could be tapped. Why is it not tapped? Because individuals and corporations are profiteering even off of making sure that you do not have the free energy resources or the reasonably priced energy resources. That way, they can charge as much as they wish on the monopoly of resources they have created. And of course, part of this comes because you accept it. Now, how is it that you can say, oh, well, God has blessed this nation or that nation because they have an abundance? Let's investigate nations that have an abundance and just see how much that is a blessing from God. Well, there was the British Empire spread throughout the world. It was stealing resources and using slave labor throughout the world. People don't want to talk about these things. What happened to the Aboriginal population in Australia, what happened to the American Indians, what happened to the slaves being brought from Africa, and all of the sugarcane farms or the diamond mining, the abuse within the Congo, where Belgium made its money, or the Indonesian trade and abuse that went on with the Netherlands, Germany, Russia. Just name country after country, and you will see resource gobblers taking from people and even annihilating whole cultures, enslaving people and taking resources at will. You say, well, America is prosperous. It was built on slave labor, on stolen land. But before you go too far and say, oh, that's just terrible, you don't have to look far north or south to see the same thing. Because the Europeans did the same in South America and in Latin America. And Canada, yes, they still have their issues with the way they treat their natives. Now, why are we talking about something that seems so far stretched from spirituality? Because we are telling you that nations prosper without necessarily being spiritual. Just because a nation is prosperous doesn't mean it's spiritual. But just because a nation is impoverished does not mean it is not spiritual. But the truth of the matter is that even the nations that would like to think they are spiritual, because they were built on a foundation of Islam, or built on a foundation of Catholicism, when you go back and look at the leadership of their religious movements, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, you will find that there has been corruption. And in that corruption, there has been a mistreatment of human beings, there has been an abuse of resources, and there has been an abundance of war. Just think of it. The Roman Catholic Church was an empire throughout the world, persecuting throughout the world any who did not follow its dictates. Now, Islam followed in the same vein, and we would tell you this: there is no government that has existed that has not claimed to be divinely inspired. Rome told you its leaders were divinely appointed. They were gods. Egypt told you the same thing. But then you came to the kingdoms later, and kings were all appointed by God. So when you had kingdoms, suddenly they were all considered to be divinely appointed. They were allowed to rule by God, even if they had been some sort of a robber baron that overthrew another legitimate government. They were suddenly God's chosen. Every country has done this. Even democracies will claim to be divinely inspired. They aren't. Governments are not divine. They are fallible, and they are led by fallible people. All governments across the board. So when you start saying, oh, this country is prosperous, oh, this country is impoverished, oh, that country is impoverished because they have bad beliefs, and this country prospers because it has good beliefs, that's just not true. Country prospers because it has good resources, or because it abuses resources or takes from other nations, or it prospers because it's just fortunate to be at the right time, at the right place, with the right flow of trade. It's not always a thing that an angel or a divine being has dropped out of the sky and given. It's usually what man has created. Now, prosperity means that you could be creating a lot of good things. You could have a virtual heaven, what people want to call heaven, an abundance, a happiness, all the good things of life. But humanity goes out of its way to create a living hell for itself. And unfortunately, that means when the collective does this, many individuals who have good hearts and pure souls suffer. And right now, your world is spiraling in a very negative way. But it should be noted that this does not have to be. It is because the world is trying to hold on to the past. There will be an occasional person that will say out there, oh, you're speaking negatively. Oh, that is such a dark thing to say. We'll tell you this. They are just lying to you for their own prosperity. But we'll tell you furthermore that what they do not tell you is how much hope there is, how possible it is for the world to live in prosperity. See, it does not take a total change of consciousness. Unlike a democracy where people usually say, oh, well, 51% of the people have to do this for us to have something good to happen. Consciousness is a cumulative power flow, which means that it is magnified. Think of the way that money is mismagnified in the banking system that does not want true representation of funds and therefore is trying to do everything within its power to keep any rivals from traditional banks from existing. What does the banking system do? It loans money that it does not have. And in that loaning process, more money is loaned. So if you start with $10 and you say, loan that out, and it gets loaned again and again, $10 may become $100. It may become $1,000 of non-existent money. The problem is that can collapse in on itself. But when you start speaking of spiritual growth, it is an exponential growth. So when you have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, what they are magnifying isn't something that will collapse. They are magnifying something that is like a magnet. It attracts more. Whereas the money goes out when banks lend it, and it eventually filters down and down. So there is nothing. If there was a run on the bank, there would be nothing. Spirituality works the opposite way. When you put that energy in, it builds. And the more you take from it, the more it grows. Energy is power. Energy is sheer and unadulterated flow of good. And that means that it doesn't take a nation full of good people. What it takes is a willing investment of people, a small, willing group of people to focus on what is good. And if they happen to be in leadership, it is even better, because good can bubble up, and that is a way that things happen generically. But always, whatever the leadership is, that consciousness will filter down. And if you have an angry leadership, you will have an angry collective people. And if you have a hateful leadership, you will have a hateful, bigoted people. And if you have a reasonable leadership, a kind leadership, you will develop a kind consciousness within the people, and it will grow. But it is easier to foment hatred than it is to nurture kindness, because hatred pulls at the very essence of the primal instinct for survival, the instinct of fear. Okay, back to money, back to prosperity. Fear is an absolute destroyer of prosperity. Fear is an absolute destroyer of wealth. Note this. That doesn't mean that simply going willy-nilly with no fear, no doubt, will make you wealthy. What it does mean is that fear will cause you to react in all of the ways that will make prosperity difficult. Collectively and individually, fear will make you shut your doors. It will make you lock out opportunities. It will cause you to go to war. Prosperity is here and here. It can't flow just from the mind. It has to flow from the heart. Now, we know what we have said has been very difficult, but we now must take this one step further, because prosperity is something that's coming in the age that is being inaugurated. And the question is, will it be prosperity that will be hoarded by a few, or will it be to all? But here is the thing. There will be new forms of energy. There will be new abilities to educate and communicate. And if these are developed, the new forms of communication, the new forms of energy flow, if they are developed and used for good purposes, all of humanity will profit. If you allow the past to hold on tight and cling until it can greedily pull in all of the areas of profit and make sure they're not shared, then the prosperity of the new era will also be limited to the few who will claim it for themselves. And you know what? It is not theirs. It is yours. And there is an abundance. There's an abundance of minerals in the earth, of the precious metals that are needed in absolute abundance. All of the things that you need to make this age a success are abundantly supplied and can be easily obtained if you do not allow your governments to restrict